Welcome to Game Fondue Reviews. In this video we're going to take a look at Saboteur. Saboteur is a semi-cooperative card game in which some players are dwarves trying to build towards the treasure and others are saboteurs trying to stop them. Let's jump right in with a description of the rules, see a few example turns being played, and then I'll be back for some closing remarks. This is Saboteur, set up for a 5-player game. To set it up, depending on the number of players, you're going to secretly deal everybody a roll, and it tells you how to break that down in the rule book. So with 5 players, you actually deal out 2 saboteurs and 4 gold diggers. So there's always one more than the number of players, so you don't necessarily know what everybody is. I tend to like to play where there is the maximum number of saboteurs, but everybody has their role and they keep it face down in front of them. Then each player gets a hand of cards. Depending on the number of players, the hands are a little bit different. With 3 to 5 players, it's 6 cards in a hand. With 6 or 7 players, it's 5 cards in a hand, and with 8 or more, it's just 4 cards in a hand. So then you're going to lay out the starting ladder here, and you leave space for 7 of these cards in between, and then you lay out the first treasure. These treasures are randomized. Only one of them is actual treasure, and there's 1 space below and 1 space above. So there's 3 possible places for the gold to be, but again, only one of them contains the gold. The treasure deck is shuffled, and then the main deck is shuffled over here. So each player has a hand of cards. On their turn, what they're going to do is they're going to play 1 card, then they're going to draw 1 card if there's any cards left in the deck, but you always have to play 1. So there's 3 ways to play a card. The most common is likely to be a path card. So you can play a path card as long as it's continuous with the start ladder wherever it is. So I can't start, by building a path over here or something like that. I have to build here because it's continuous with the start ladder, and then I would draw a card. You can only ever build cards this way. You can certainly turn them different directions, but you can't build sideways. Next thing you can do on your turn is play an action card, and there's different types of action cards, and they get played in front of you. So what a rockfall does is when you play it, you can destroy any space here. So let's pretend this player was a bad guy and he decided he wanted to rockfall this place. So he just discards the rockfall along with that path, and then the game continues. But remember, let's pretend actually this wasn't here. The next player still has to build continuous with the start space, so they couldn't ever build over here. They'd have to plug this hole before they can continue building. The next type of card is a peek, and that's this one here, and all you do is you play that card, and you alone get to secretly look at one of these spaces. It's either going to be gold or just some coal there, and you can certainly tell other players what you see, but they may or may not trust you. Next is these break cards, and you play them in front of yourself or another player, though it's definitely recommended you play in front of another player, and that player is going to be broken. There's 3 different types, and that's the most you can do is break one of each player's, each of their 3 tools, so they can't have 2 wagons broken, for instance. But if a player has at least one thing broken, they can never build path cards until that's repaired. And that brings us to the last type of card, and those are repair cards. You can repair yourself or others. There's also some repair cards that do 2 things, but you can't do both. You have to pick one of the 2 that they do, and all you would do is discard them together. And ultimately, that person can be repaired or not repaired. But if they're repaired, they're able to build pathways again. So you're either playing an action card, building a path, or your third option is to discard a card face down. All discards in this game are face down, and then at the end of your turn, you just draw a card provided there's one left in the pile. So the round ends in one of 2 ways. One is if the players build toward this gold, and whenever these places are built to, you orient them so they do fit with the card just put there. But if the players get to the gold, the dwarves win. If the deck runs out and the players all pass consecutively, as in they can't play any cards, the game also ends and the saboteurs win. So the win conditions result in slightly different things, but let's first go over what happens if the gold is revealed. So as soon as the gold is revealed, the game is over. And then they're going to draw as many these nugget cards, they're between 1 and 3 gold on them, as there are players. Except in a 10-player game, you actually only draw 9. So the dwarf that actually built the last card gets to look at these first, and he picks one. Obviously, he's going to pick the highest value one and put it face down in front of himself. And then he passes counterclockwise to the next dwarf, and that dwarf picks one, and so on. So getting there, being the person who actually builds there is probably going to result in you getting a few extra cards. However, there's an optional rule that dwarves that are broken, meaning they were unable to build or they have one of these cards in front of them, actually get passed. So they don't get to pick any cards, and this would just go to the next dwarf that was able to build and doesn't have broken tools. However, if the players don't make it to this gold, the saboteurs win the round, and they're going to get a number of nuggets depending on the number of saboteurs there are. If there's only 1 saboteur in the game, he's going to get 4 nuggets. And note that this does not mean cards. This means he just kind of takes until he gets to 4. So right there he has 4, and that's what he would get. If there's 2 or 3 saboteurs, they get 3 each, and if there's 4 saboteurs, they get 2 nuggets each. If this wasn't the third round, play continues with the, we just reset everything, everything is reshuffled, and play continues with the player to the left of the player who finished, or to the left of the player who went last. If it was the end of the third round, the game's over, and whoever has the most gold wins. Let's get going with our playthrough. Of course, in the real game, the players' roles and their hands would be secret, but we just put them up here to make it easy. So this guy's going to go first, and the first thing he's going to do is he's going to play this peek card. And then he's going to take a peek at this bottom card here. And now he knows what it is, and he tells everybody that's what it is, but people are very suspect. So he's played a card, so then he draws a card, and he got another peek. So it's this guy's turn. He has lots of bad stuff, but he's a saboteur, so he wants to have lots of bad stuff. He decides to just build this over here, telling everybody he doesn't really have any good cards. And then he draws one. Wow, very evil hand. This guy's also a saboteur, so he definitely doesn't want to keep this cross around because that's really helpful to the player. So he's going to secretly discard that face down and draw a card. He told everybody he just has lots of bad stuff. And then this guy goes and he decides that he would like to lay out this one here. So he builds a path because he's not broken. He can certainly do so. And then he draws a card. And play continues like this. Remember, there's some different action cards and people can freely break people. We'll come back closer to the end of the round so you can see what the gold distribution looks like. Welcome back. It's almost the end of the round. As you can see, this player here is broken, as is this one and this one. Both of these guys are saboteurs, though, and this guy was an honest dwarf. So it's this guy's turn. Unfortunately, he has nowhere where he can build this because it doesn't fit anywhere. There were a couple of rock falls that did a lot of damage to these guys. Remember, you can only build continuously from the start. So he discards this card, and this guy goes last, and he has nowhere to put this, so he discards as well. Everybody's out of cards, so the round is over. And the dwarfs did not get here, so the saboteurs win because there's two even though they're broken. Because the saboteurs win, they each get 3 nuggets worth from the deck, and they get to keep that. Had the dwarfs won, let's pretend the dwarfs build up here, and they reached it. So if this dwarf was the builder, and we are playing that optional rule, there's 5 players, so he would take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 from the deck, and he would look at them. He would put one face down in front of him and then pass counterclockwise. So it would go to this guy, but he's broken. So if you're using this rule, he's skipped, and then it would go to this guy who takes one and then back, and these guys would essentially alternate. If he was still, if you were not playing by that rule or he was not broken, you would include him in sharing the loot. I always play Saboteur with the optional rules that the broken dwarves don't get any gold. It makes it so much more fun for me by making it cutthroat. It's not unusual to see broken dwarves actually help the Saboteurs because they'd rather them get a few gold each as opposed to the remaining dwarves get tons, especially when those dwarves have heal cards but won't help them out. This is another game that is on Board Game Arena, so if you haven't tried it and you're on the fence about it, I suggest you take a look at it there. It plays real quick. It's real easy. It does very well with new players because how simple it is. But if you're using those optional rules, which I recommend you do, be careful because some people can take that stuff a little personally and get a little bit upset. But this is one, if it looks fun to you, it's a neat little card game that I enjoy quite a bit. That's Saboteur.